Welcome to The Advocate's Voice, Personal Injury with David Maran.
Hello and welcome to The Advocate's Voice, Personal Injury with David Maran. David is a personal injury and auto accident lawyer who has represented people throughout the state of New Jersey who have suffered loss or serious injury due to the reckless, negligent, or careless actions of another. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and in today's episode, we are discussing a very important topic: underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage. How this is the coverage that protects your family. David, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good day. Hi, Kevin.
So let's start with the basics. Can you explain what underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage is, and why is it important for personal injury victims, especially when the at-fault driver has minimal or no insurance?
You're basically including the answer in your question.
Oh, good. All right, well, let's move on.
It is probably the most important part of your policy, next to something that pays your bills. Aside from taking care of your medical bills, the most important part of the policy is the part of the policy which protects you and your family that reside with you. Uninsured motorist is designed specifically for when the person who causes the accident has no insurance or perhaps even fled the scene, a hit and run driver. That's when uninsured motorist comes into play. Underinsured motorist is a little bit different because the person has stopped, they have insurance, they just don't have very much. And your coverage picks up where theirs lets off up to the maximum amount you purchase. This coverage covers you as the policyholder, and it covers every resident relative in your house. That's just tremendous coverage, and the most important coverage that you can possibly buy for overall protection. You have to understand that probably about 85% of the people in the state of New Jersey carry either no insurance at all, and they're allowed to sometimes because of dollar a day and basic policies, or they carry what was sometimes called full coverage, which is a really bad way of saying $15,000 per person, $30,000 per accident. Loss of life at $15,000? That's horrible. Yeah. So you have the opportunity to buy more coverage, and this is the coverage that really protects you.
$15,000 to $30,000 for most accidents is these days, it's not going to get you very far.
No, it is not. And it splits up very quickly. The lawyer wants to get paid if you have a lawyer, and most times you do. The medical bills are often paid, but if they're not, they would come out of that. There's even, and when they are paid, there are often deductibles and co-pays. So $15,000 does not go very far at all.
No, not even a little bit. Yeah, it's interesting because people don't seem to understand how this coverage works or why this coverage is important. What are some of the common misconceptions that people have about uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, and how do you think clients can better understand its value when purchasing insurance?
Well, gone are the days when you were buying insurance that you sat with an insurance agent and they really sat there and explained to you what the different kinds of coverage that you were buying were and what options you had. Almost always, people are looking for the best price. So if you're only shopping for the lowest price, you're not really understand what you're giving up, which may not be very expensive.
Right.
Ordinarily, your big cost is that initial, quote, full coverage or minimum statutory amount. Picking up larger coverages from there are really not that expensive. But if you don't ask about them and don't shop them, you're not going to know. There's two principal areas that are going to protect your family. One is what pays your medical bills, and the other is what essentially guarantees that you're going to put money in your pocket if you've been injured. And that is uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage through your company, stuff you negotiated for, and coverage that protects you and every family member you live with.
Is there a reason you think that people don't know about it as much? Because there's almost like, you'd almost think that maybe it should be part of the required insurance under the law. Like common sense would tell you that maybe that should be the case, but it's not. Is there any particular reason that are they trying to keep people from purchasing it, do you think? Or is it really just...
The answer to that is that is happening, and for different reasons. There is a coverage selection form that the state of New Jersey has been using for a long, long time. And it does explain what each of the coverages are. But when you're solely shopping for price,
Yeah.
you're not paying a lot of attention to all those little things in the policy, which can be very big things if you need to make a claim. So if you ask questions, talk to insurance people, call the companies, speak to a representative, and ask them what different parts of the policies mean. Definitely spend the time to understand what you're buying and compare them to other companies and see what the charges are. So, for example, you're only allowed to purchase as much uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage as you have liability. Yeah, so that's a restrictive thing because you can't buy one without the other. But what happens in practice is that even if you're buying more coverage, the insurance company is not automatically giving you the same level of coverage in uninsured motorists. Often they're giving you something less. So basically they're selling you insurance to pay the other guy, but they're not selling you the same amount of insurance to cover yourself and your family members. And personally, I just think that's wrong.
Yeah.
They're not really saving you any significant money, but they're protecting themselves from claims because they don't really make much in the way of money, this type of coverage. It's very, very inexpensive. So the fact that they're not selling it to you seems intentional to me.
Yeah, it almost feels that way with just hearing you talk about it.
Yeah, I'm seeing it very, very often. And at some point we're going to talk about that. I don't know if we're at the question. We do.
So can you kind of explain how the uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage works, like how it kicks in when you're involved in an accident with a driver who has little or no insurance?
Absolutely. Well, they go different ways depending upon whether we have a completely uninsured person or we have a person who's underinsured. So let's start with just uninsureds, the simple ones. If you don't know who caused the accident because they hit and run, they fled the scene, they left, they didn't look after you, they may not, they certainly didn't call 911 and left you on your own. And you hopefully called it in to the police and they wrote a report. And obviously you report the accident to your insurance company. That's your first call. I've had an accident. The guy fled the scene. I called the cops and I went to the hospital. Help me. They're going to do two things for you. They're going to set up your medical coverage. That's called personal injury protection. We'll talk more about that another time, but you can get $250,000 in coverage, which was how the legislators initially wanted you to do that. They've lowered the available coverages since then, but you should always get the $250 if you can afford it, and always choose primary. PIP is primary. Again, we'll discuss that in another episode, but for purposes of uninsured motorists, even if you've only bought full coverage or $15,000, $30,000, you have $15,000, $30,000 in coverage for that uninsured driver. Tell them, I have an uninsured motorist claim. And it's not just personal injury. It can also cover your car. Say you're driving an older car and you chose to drop collision, because collision is a very expensive part of the policy. Most of us mature people who've had kids, at some point they might have had an older car on your policy. And once that car is, let's say, 10, 12 years old, it doesn't have the same value. So drop collision, okay? It makes sense. You save a lot of money because the biggest part of your premium dollar is collision. Just always is. It's for fixing all these cars. Today, full coverage, or the minimum statutory, is 15, 30, and 25. The last part, 25, is for property damage. You have $25,000 in uninsured motorists for property damage. You can fix that older car. You can, if it's totaled, you'll get a check for that older car from your uninsured motorist coverage. And every version of uninsured motorist coverage includes property damage, whether it's single limit or split limit. You're going to have protection there. So report the accident to the police, let them investigate, get your medical care, call your company. Tell them you have both. I was hurt, I need to see a doctor, and the guy who hit me fled. Now, let's say you don't know right away. You pick up the police report a couple days later, and you see that the other guy got all kinds of tickets for not having insurance. Now you're kind of getting tipped off. that maybe the other guy really doesn't have insurance. So there's a code on the police report which will tell me who their insurance company is supposed to be. You can look up that code, do a simple Google search on New Jersey insurance codes. Boom, you'll get every company, their address. Not sure about the phone number, but you can look them up in Google as well. Call the company that insures the other guy. Confirm that they do or don't have coverage. If they don't, you need a writing. Ask them to write you a letter confirming that. Then make your claim against your company and have your car fixed, at the very least. Now, if you were hurt, your uninsured motorist is what's going to pay you. It's also available to the occupants of your vehicle, or it could be your kid. If my kid who lives with me is crossing the street in Oregon and struck by a hit and run driver, we know he's uninsured because we don't know who he is. My company will pay his medical bills through PIP, and he will have uninsured motorists through my policy because he's a household relative insured on the policy. He's covered. Underinsured motorist is somewhat similar. Once we're aware there's not enough coverage, I generally will put the other carrier on notice, meaning my carrier or the client's carrier, that we have a potential underinsured motorist claim. We are aware that the tortfeasor, they will be a defendant if we ever go into court. But if we're not in court, they're merely an insured or a driver or a tortfeasor is what they teach us in school. The person who did the tort or caused the accident. We notify our company that so-and-so, the tortfeasor, the driver, the bad driver, doesn't have enough insurance, that his insurance company has notified us that he has, for example, $15,000. And then we tell our company, please be aware, we will be pursuing an underinsured motorist claim for the difference. What if you carry $100,000? You may have another $85,000 available to you that you paid for. Not very much, by the way, but you paid for it. It's your policy. It's where you present that claim.
Can you sort of walk us through or give us an example of a time, a specific time where uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage made a significant difference in the outcome of a personal injury claim?
Yes, of course. I'll tell you about two sisters that I represented about 2 years ago. These two women did not own a car. These two women were crossing the street when they were struck by a car. Both sustained leg fractures, pretty bad ones. They both lived with their sisters, and both sisters had cars and had insurance policies. So we presented first the medical claims for each one, and we presented underinsured motorist claims for both drivers against both sisters. Well, the medical bills were paid through PIP, as we talked about, and we will talk more about another time. But the UM or UIM, which was available, and let me see. One was underinsured, and there was a $25,000 policy, and the sister that she lived with had a $255, meaning $250 was available to the sister who lived with the better policy. And her claim settled appropriately, somewhere just under $250. The other woman lived with, obviously, her own sister, and her own sister only had a $25,000 policy herself. And that driver had the same 25 policy, the driver who caused the accident. There was no underinsured motorist coverage because they had the same amount of coverage as the person who caused the accident. So in one situation, one sister knew a lot more about insurance and protected herself and her sister by buying a nicer policy, a bigger policy that included, obviously, it needed to have higher liability in order to buy higher uninsured motorists. And uninsured, underinsured, they're always phrased together. They mean different things, but the levels are the same. So she had purchased $255, meaning any one person can receive up to $250,000. So the offer comes in from the tortfeasor's company at $25,000. You are required to again notify the sister's policy, the home policy, that this offer's been made. You have 30 days to make your own decision whether you want me to continue the claim against the tortfeasor or not. And most don't. And then you have permission to accept the offer, and then you make your formal demand for underinsured motorist benefits against the sister's policy, which we eventually settled. I think it was $225, which is obviously almost 10 times better.
Right. Wow.
than the other gal with the same injury. And they didn't buy the policies. Their sisters did.
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't know that.
So it's very hard to really know everything that's going on all the time. Most people wouldn't think to ask what kind of insurance their sibling bought,
I wouldn't.
especially if they didn't buy any. Now, if they bought their own policy, they're aware because theoretically they're asking the questions for themselves.
Right.
How would someone know to question their sister or urge their sister to buy better coverage?
Yeah.
Right? Because you're spending money for this stuff. It's expensive.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
What's important to know is the expensive part is really just getting in and buying that statutory level of coverage. Getting a little bit more coverage is not really that painful.
Right.
So you have to ask the questions. What's available? What's the best choice for me? And if at all possible, get enough liability coverage so you can get enough uninsured and underinsured motorists so that your family lives with the good sister with the better policy.
All right. Well, I need to go check my policy right now. So thank you for tuning into the Advocate's Voice Personal Injury with David Maran. To connect with David and the team, head to njmalpractice.com and please like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. David, really good talking to you. Thanks so much for all the insight.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.